You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's the most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, as always, we put Ghana first. I've got some of your comments. We'll read them before we go to ask them and interrogate the question if indeed the president is seeking to blight the neutrality and independence of the Electoral Commission. He actually says that don't think about the managers of the commission, think about the voter and the vote. That's all there is. The managers can't do anything about it. Some disagree with that. My guest, Professor Bafo Ajimandua, Chief Executive Officer, the John A. Kufuor Foundation. That's John A. Kufuor Foundation. Professor Kwejo Appiaje-Tua is Lecturer, Faculty of Law, University of Ghana. Richard Ahiagwa is Director of Communications of the NPP. Felix Kwachio-Fosu is former Deputy Communications Minister and aide to former President Mahama. Now, let's get to some of your messages that you have shared. This one says, Ghanaians decided that NDC was not good enough to manage Ghana and so decided to allow them to be a strong opposition. They are proving to be not good enough in opposition also. This is the strongest opposition Ghanaians have created and handed it to NDC, but they are disappointing here also. And that is from Kofi. Kwame Sapong says, Felix, you haven't started well. You can't blame the voter for what happened yesterday. Your party took a decision and couldn't keep it. That's the bottom line. You can't shift the goalpost. Leave the government out of this and look inward. That's from Kwame Siedu Sapong. Okay, so this one says, our parliament is now comparable to Uber or Okada. Pay and ride. What does this make of the ex-president's endorsement for unopposed flag bearership? More upset to come? That is a question. State capture is dear and present. Now, that was from Ni. And Jan Best says, as expected, when it comes to these things, the politicians have one motivation, themselves. Scratch my back or palm, let me scratch yours. Colin Stetter says, the pillars, that is leaders, to help fix the country are not helping because deep down you have people who want wealth without working, who have knowledge without character, and who want to go into politics without principle. Our only hope is God to intervene. Well, God intervenes through humans. Then Edward Beidu says, what hurts the NDC most is the hefty approval of Kobina Tahiru Muhammad. But hey, it's all in the interest of Ghana. Those spaces in governance cannot be left vacant for close to 2 years. Kweku Ewua says, the NDC MPs voting pattern was not a sabotage of the new leadership. It's rather a vindication that indeed some of them are compromised. That's how they have been voting since the start of this parliament. And it goes to affirm why the changes were necessary. It's good. It's a good omen. Obeng Boateng, I think Honorable Ato Forcing must answer. He should come out and explain to us why NDC MPs had the numbers, yet we lost and got the ministers approved. For Kofi, as much as we are disappointed with the NDC MPs for not rejecting extra cost, we should be worried about the many MPs, the few NDC MPs joined to vote yes. Well, that's their position. Luminal, MPs are on the tickets of their parties in parliament to pursue their collective party agenda on choices, policy decisions, and on public opinion at all times. Those MPs are there to do partisan politics because parliament is a house of politics. They can't be independent. Interesting point there. Says they can't be independent. I'll read just two more. This one, Frank Anderson says that NDC MPs have just told the whole world they are not to be trusted and have no credibility. They are part of Ghana's problems. Those individuals have no conscience and a disgrace to this generation. It makes a mockery of people's representation in Parliament. From today until 2024 elections, they are better off remaining silent. They have no principle. Bunch of selfish, self-serving bandits. Oh, really? Okay. Thank you for your messages. Now, let's go to the question of the Electoral Commission and the new appointments that have been made into that commission. So, on that one, I'll begin with Felix. They will just listen to this, the president himself, and I think that should be enough. Let's hear the president, and then I'll come back to the studio.
In emphasizing the importance and credibility of elections, it must be pointed out that the count, the collation, the declaration of results cannot and should not be more important than the sacred God-given right of a citizen casting his or her ballot. I have said it before and I will repeat it. Elections are about those who cast the vote, not those who count, not those who supervise, not those who transmit, and not those who declare. The heart of the democratic process is giving effect to the choices made by those who cast the vote. The three persons I have sworn in a few moments ago as members of the Electoral Commission are persons I am confident will bring integrity, professionalism, and independence and fairness of mind to the discharge of their duties.
Right, and the three persons, Dr. Peter Appiah-Hene, who is an assistant professor with over 10 years working experience in the computer science industry, and he is with he's the head of Department of Science and Informatics at the University of Energy and Natural Resources in Sunyani. There was, right after the elections, the potential ministers for that region came up, and there was this flyer that circulated, and he was one of those that was said to be in contention. And the flyer also described him as a patron of TESCON in that region. TESCON is the NPP's student wing. Since his name came up, people have brought up some footages, including radio discussions where he's vehemently speaking in favor and supporting government policy. Not just government policy, but speaking as though, he was speaking for a party or as a party communications person. The next person is Reverend Akua Ofori-Boateng. Reverend Akua Ofori-Boateng has not drawn so much attention. She's Director of Programs for the Anglican Diocese of Accra, a member of the United States Trade Advisory Committee on Africa. She served on the 2020 Eminent Advisory Committee of the Electoral Commission of Ghana. I know her beyond that because we are both fellows in the Africa Aspen group. I'll tell you a bit more about her beyond this. And then also we have Hajia Salima Ahmed Tijani. She's a banker with close to 2 decades experience. She's a senior remittance officer at the Agricultural Development Bank. She's a member of the Chartered Institute of Bankers and associate member of the Boardroom Institute. There's also a lot more to say about her as far as her affiliations are concerned that you may not have heard yet. There's a lot that's been dug up on her as well. So let's begin with you, Felix. Yeah. What exactly are your issues? The Constitution says once you have the competence and qualification of an MP, you can be an EC member. They are supposed to be chairperson, 2 deputies, and 4 other members. And that's exactly what has happened. And these are replacing 3 other people who I suppose would have retired.
Samson, I watched the insert you played, which had the president made those comments about what he thinks the role of the EC is, or how elections should be determined, or the outcomes of elections should be determined. And once again, I come to the conclusion that his words ring hollow, as has been the case on many, many occasions. He simply does not mean what he says, and he doesn't say what he means. Because the occasion on which he made these comments was the very occasion where he has appointed this well-known MPP fanatic into the leadership of a body that is supposed to serve as a referee in elections that are conducted between the NDC and MPP and other political parties. There's a reason why the Electoral Commission of Ghana is mandated to be independent in our constitution. The reason is that the framers of the constitution do not want interference with their work in a manner that makes the playing field uneven and swings elections unfairly in favor of one participant or the other. That is the fundamental principle. So when the time comes for people to be appointed to the commission, and the president launches such a gratuitous attack on the independence of the commission by appointing somebody who is known, not just known to be a supporter or sympathizer of the party, but a member of the party, who I'm told has contested elections before on the ticket of the party, is a known communicator who has publicly gone to defend the positions of President Akufo-Addo and the party, and who has been patron of the students' wing of the MPP. It calls for condemnation. And you see, I do not understand why in this country there are sections of people who simply allow President Akufo-Addo to get away with the murder that he's engaged in. I'm talking about using it figuratively. So, Samson, tomorrow, if for any reason there's a vacancy at the Electoral Commission, and President Akufo-Addo, President Mahama is president, he appoints me as Electoral Commissioner, is it going to sit well with the people of Ghana? All those people who have kept quiet and are watching on for this desecration of the independence of the Electoral Commission and other institutions, will it sit well with me, with them, if I, as rabidly NDC as I am, is appointed as a chairperson of the Electoral Commission, simply because President Mahama has the power to do so? There are some things that we cannot accept, and this represents a new low in the systematic effort to demolish the credibility and independence of state institutions and tie them to the apron string of President Akufo-Addo and his MPP, so that they will have absolute control and dominance over all strata of our society. This is what it is about. Already, the manner in which the old leadership of the commission was removed through frivolity, and I think it was frivolous. The charges leveled against them were laughable. The manner in which they were removed and replaced with people whose conduct at least has tended to create the impression that they have sympathies for the MPP was problematic enough. It generated huge uproar. And consistently, what they have done, the effort they have made to make it more difficult for people to vote in this country than what they have to do, has generated considerable disenchantment amongst the people of Ghana. So the last thing we expected was that President Akufo-Addo was going to put the icing on the cake by appointing an openly MPP person to be part of the commission. You see, we cannot accept this. What it simply means is that you cannot look forward that elections held in this country where President Akufo-Addo and the MPP have a stake will have the sort of fairness and balance that it should have. And that is the reason why you constantly see that there is tension between the EC and the NDC, for instance. They are simply not prepared to listen to anything the NDC says, because it appears that they have an objective. They think that their mandate really is to entrench President Akufo-Addo and his party in power at all costs, even if they have to undertake some of the most shocking and most bizarre operations, like this insistence on a Ghana card as the only means of registration, at a time when they know that it is not everybody who qualifies to vote who has that card, and it is not through the fault of those individuals that they do not have it. It does not make any bit of sense, but they will implement it because that is what President Akufo-Addo and his MPP wants. Now, the president is going for broke and appointing hardcore MPP members. Look, we in the NDC will never sit down for elections to be skewed in favor of the MPP ab initio, even before the first ballot is cast. And if it is the intention of President Akufo-Addo to use these sort of things to give the MPP unfair advantage, then he is grossly mistaken. It doesn't matter what he does. Even if the elections are held in his bedroom, to the extent that his governance has been this poor, and they have destroyed our economy and every facet of our life as a people, and inflicted this sort of pain and hardship on us, the people of Ghana, I'm sure, will speak in a manner that will make it impossible for any sort of manipulation to change the verdict. So all that President Akufo-Addo and his MPP are setting us up for is more tension going up into elections. Because what is the point? There are many people. You see, you made a point about the gentleman's qualification. Something. There are 1,001 Ghanaians who have even more better credentials than this man. So really, if it's just about credentials, there are many people you can find who are not tainted politically. Who can do this role. I do not remember any time in our history where state institutions were so blatantly and frontally politicized as we have had.
The question others have asked is, what do you guys want the president to do? He just come into office within a period where many people are retiring or leaving certain offices and he has to fill them. In the judiciary, you accuse him of packing the judiciary. But the thing is that every time he's making appointments to the judiciary or the Supreme Court or High Court or Court of Appeal, it is because, you know, they are replacing people who need to be replaced. In the NCC, also there has been appointments which were confirmed. He inaugurated together with, sworn in together with these people. So what is it? What should he do? For the EC, these three people are replacing Mrs. Hajia Sadatu Meida, Mr. Ebenezer Agrifin, and Mrs. Rebecca Kabuki Ajololo, who have all retired. You mentioned one person. When it comes to the woman, the only link from all the information that has been Salima, the only thing that has been used, sort of linked, she's been linked to, is the fact that the husband is Sheikh TB Bamba, who is a former MC, former MP, and Ghana's ambassador to Saudi Arabia until, is it 2020 or so, and that his sister, her sister is the current CEO of Maslock. What does that do? That the pointing to the fact that, is it her sister, not herself, who has indicated publicly that she was going to contest elections and so on and so forth. Can people be independent despite this? When it comes to Ekuya Ofori Boateng, the Reverend Minister, we have told you she has had opportunity with the Electoral Commission, the eminent panel. She is a member of the United States Trade Advisory Committee on Africa. She serves on as a board member on the board of the Otumfuo Osei Tutu II Foundation. She's a co-founder and executive director of Aquatus, a faith-based foundation, and she also is an author. She's the author of the book Broken for Use. She has done well for herself in terms of her academics. She's got an MBA from Indiana University in the USA. She's got a Master's of Arts degree in ministry from the Trinity Theological Seminary in Legon. She has a Bachelor of Science degree in Engineering Physics from the Miami University in the USA. The only thing people say is that, well, she preaches on a radio station owned by the cousin of the president. So what?
Nobody has mentioned the name of the Reverend Minister. I don't think so. In the case of the other lady, you have established a certain relationship even if tenuous.
Yeah.
Which suggests that she has some level of political exposure. At least she's related to somebody who is known to the MPP. But you see, you can avoid that. Because what that does is to deepen suspicion of an institution that already has acted in ways to engender that suspicion. Already, Jean Mensah and Bosman Asare are people that we have deep suspicions have sympathies towards the MPP, at least because of their previous conduct in their previous roles. Again, the manner in which they even came into office.
So if you fault Jean Mensah, who else will you not fault? Because Jean Mensah was running IEA,
yes, but even
a governance think tank that has contributed immensely to our democracy.
We are not running battles with the IEA. I'm sure you know. We don't have time for me to go through all the issues we have with the IEA, even in terms of their posturing on the political landscape. And these things are important. The Constitution does not require the EC to be independent for fun. So that requirement must be met. Can you, in all honesty, say that this Apia Hene guy meets the requirement of independence? How do you pluck an MPP person, non-MPP person, and go and put him on a commission and say that we should not comment?
Okay.
Given all that has happened with the EC and the way that they even behave, look at their posturing towards the NDC. You have the deputy or a commissioner of the EC who goes on radio and describes the NDC as the biggest threat to Ghana's democracy. That is a political statement. How are we in the NDC supposed to accept this? How do we accept that such a person can preside over free, fair, and transparent elections, given the history that we have had in the last few years? Then, to make matters worse, you go and make this sort of appointment, and you have spared no effort to highlight the credentials of the individuals. Granted that they are professionally qualified, but I have made a point already that you can find 1 million Ghanaians with such credentials who are not politically exposed or politically tainted. At the very least, you cannot trace their political support for any party.
Right.
But these people simply do not mean independent. What it simply means, before I land up, just one before I come say, what it simply means is that nobody can guarantee that these people will act independent of President Akufo-Addo and his MPP. That is essentially what we are saying. And I have posed a question to you, something. What President Akufo-Addo has done simply means that if tomorrow President Mahama is president and he appoints me as electoral commissioner, Richard Hayagba should keep quiet and live with it. That is essentially what he has done.
Yes, Richard, what do you have to say? I allowed him sufficient time because they are raising the opposition a lot more. Even though they are civil society, we have heard from the CDDs, Abrampa, and a few others. Yes.
Well, Samson, I have listened to the conversation, and earlier on, I just know about the individual remotely. The fact that he has some affinity with the MPP, which is the basis for all of this. I think that, yes, when you're looking at the issue of maybe people being reasonably disassociated from political parties and all of that, you can make the point. I don't disagree with that. But what I find difficult is the seeming impression being created that our electoral system is so vulnerable, is so it's not as rigorous as it should be, such that the appointment of an individual on that board really just changes the game for NDC. It's not. Whilst I grant all of the other concerns, what is material, what is consequential for us to talk about is the health and the systems we have built. In this country, it was said, and I think that Phyllis agrees, that the winning of election in this country occurs at the polling station. And so that the processes are in place to make our electoral system even independent from those who manage it, such that you and I who have stake in the elections that are coming up or subsequent ones, we have what it takes to police the system, independent of the individuals who are there. And so I don't see where we then belabor the point and say because of that something uncharacteristic has happened.
But that position of the president is a debatable one, isn't it? And I just, immediately I heard it, I went to pick Mabel Akubanase's book, Pink Sheets. After the election petition, she wrote a book. And the CJ then, Georgina Wood, wrote a foreword. You know, she empaneled the court to hear that petition. And the foreword, this is what she wrote. It's instructive. First, she's quoting Joseph Stalin. And he says, quote, "The people who cast the votes don't decide an election. The people who count the votes do." End quote. And she says, As I write this, I reflect over this quote by the Soviet legend. From one perspective, it seems to me the burden of deciding who wins an election lies on election officials. Equally persuasive is the perspective which suggests that it is the voter that decides an election. Could it be one or the other? Or could it be both? Whither are we drifting? At rock bottom, however we look at it, this quote seems to sum up the issues that bog our minds on elections and electioneering activities in Ghana. Do you agree with this or you don't?
Well, it's a view expressed, right? I wouldn't necessarily disagree or agree with it. The point...
But you agree with the president?
Well, I'm just saying that if you look at the issues before us, and you know that there is the appearance that, okay, well, independence and all of that, yes. So once you appoint the individual and he goes there, his work becomes public. There isn't any way where you can hear or you see that Akufo-Addo tells him, go and do this, and he goes to do that. Everything he does will be held to public scrutiny. And I think that the NDC will not miss the opportunity to do so. What I think is problematic is the NDC's own constant act of shooting themselves in the foot. Because you yourself have deselected yourself from going to IPAC to begin with. So when decisions are made, then you stand outside and you are blaming everybody that, well, somehow you cannot be part of, or you are not part of the decision, and therefore you go to Parliament to relitigate a decision or discussion or an agreement that has passed at IPAC. So it's the NDC that is doing this to themselves, to say that we have an institution that relatively Constitution granted the independence of that institution. It is for us as interest stakeholders to make sure that we hold the system to function the way it ought to function. Okay. Now, you can put me as EC, but then I cannot, in broad daylight, say go and have this thing skewed in favor of the MPP.
Can you be independent? If something is going wrong, your party will call you. Yeah. They'll say, look, Richard, what's going on? You ought to check this. And you will listen to your party, won't you? But that's the temptation.
But you see, there's an integrity dimension to all of these. And so if that was possible, I'm sure that Madame Charlotte Osei could have listened to calls that may have gone to her, whatever time, to declare the election for the NDC. The thing is such that we have to come and to have confidence in the system.
Even though Charlotte Osei couldn't do that, do you remember how vehemently you fought her? And people believe up to today that she ought to have been there, but for, a grand agenda to remove her, which was successful.
Well, something I don't see any grand agenda. I can agree with our opposition of her. Also, it's a function of what a democracy is, and in fact has become a legacy of the growth of our process. Because we did that, and we realized that, okay, well, that really is not the outcome. Because when it mattered and Ghanaians made the choice, the counting of it was according to the structures that we put together. So nobody can actually do anything untoward. So that's the confidence they must have, that we all are building a democracy and we are growing to a certain point. So when we have gotten to, the NDC should not be entertaining that fear. They should go to IPAC. They should engage the conversation to say that where they don't understand something, that conversation will be addressed at IPAC. So everybody is comfortable.
So ask yourself, what Richard and the NPP would have been doing if we turned the table and put the NDC in power and put you in opposition. And this appointment was made. You just, a while ago, you said maybe the appearance, and that actually reminds me of a scripture which says, avoid all appearances of evil. 1 Thessalonians somewhere. So it's like conflict of interest. In law, we say avoiding the appearances of it is as important as the actual of it. What would you have been doing? What would you have been saying if the situation was turned around?
Something, when, and I think up until she left office and was demonstrating recently, the former Chief Justice was seen as a relative of the president and therefore was bad that she was appointed. But just recently, we saw that there's, on a principle basis, she can depart. And she departed. So let's not carry this group position to say that, because look, we are all friends. In this country, people know people, right? A minute ago, Honorable Rickett Hagan was talking about people knowing people across the aisle. Is that supposed to prevent us from working or so therefore people would sell their integrity and not do what is right? No, it's a matter of concern. You can express that. You make note of it. Society takes account of it, that yes, we see that this person has some leanings towards this political party. But what is healthy that we must encourage is that the system must be policed to work. So if I were the NDC, I would focus my attention on how we strengthen the electoral system, which includes that I go to IPAC. I don't continue to sit outside. So we engage together to mold the system, and so that we can get the outcome.
So Professor Piejetua, I start with you here on this. How do you feel about this? As far as Richard and his team are concerned, it shouldn't matter that much what we are looking at. And as the president said, forget about these people. They don't control anything. And thanks to my church member, Richmond. Richmond sends me 1 Thessalonians 5:22. That's correct. It says, avoid all appearances of evil. Yes.
Yes. Sam's, I was also going to give the quotes. First Thessalonians 5:22.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. So I think in a liberal democratic system like the one we have, elections play a very pivotal role. And at the heart of ensuring the credibility of the election process is the election monitoring system. In this case, our electoral commission. The credibility of the commission is very important. And there's a very useful work done by Frederick Ebert's Foundation on electoral commissions in West Africa. And it concluded that there are two main types of electoral commissions. One appointed based on neutrality, and the other appointed based on sort of proportional representation of party members in the Electoral Commission, plus some civil society organizations. In fact, the example of Burkina Faso even includes some women's organizations and traditional authorities and so on. Ghana decided to adopt the neutrality system, whereby there shouldn't be any appearance of political attachments of any member to the Electoral Commission. And that is what we have operated with for a number of years. And that is why it wasn't surprising when Charlotte Osei was appointed. People cried about it and expressed some concerns about it, even to the extent that Richard Delasky at CTFM took the matter to court.
Right.
Unfortunately, the court didn't give justice to the decision regarding whether the advice that should be given by the Council of State. Okay. So it shows that we have operated this system, we have created that tradition. And for a number of years, in fact, some Afrobarometer reports done in 2016, 2006, 2007 indicated that the Electoral Commission was the most trusted institution in Ghana, higher than the government, higher than the judiciary, higher than parliament, and so on.
Afarijan?
And in the same, yes, that's the period of Afarijan. And in the same survey, it also came out that the EC of Ghana is the most trusted EC in the whole of Africa.
That's right.
You know, but if you look at the records now, we are going down in terms of credibility of the EC. In a more recent survey done by Afrobarometer in 2016, the EC is the third most less trusted of the institutions in Africa after Gabon, another country, and then Ghana comes in at 37%. So it tells you that when neutrality is sacrificed, it affects.
Is it reality, or these are perceptions that are pushed by the two parties? If you mention, for example, Charlotte Osei, who had knowledge of Charlotte Osei having any partisan, as it were, you know, connections, properly so to speak? She had been with the NCC, which is also a place where you are supposed to see people who are neutral and can be fair, for many years before she went in there. Yet the NPP, you know, cried hell.
Yes, that's where I'm coming to. That even in the case of Charlotte Osei, NPP was up in arms and strongly opposed that. So if you compare the position of Charlotte Osei with Dr. Appiah Ahene, then you see a clear situation where neutrality has been seriously compromised, because Dr. Appiah Ahene is clearly isolated with, connected with NPP, no two-way. And it is, I believe that it was strongly because of that the president in his statement said that it is not about who is voting, but it is it's about who is voting, but it's not about who is counting the.
He was preempting the debate.
Exactly. He was trying to kill the debate and saying that this is where the focus should be. But interestingly, when you look at the stolen verdict written by Dubois after the 1992 elections, this was the position of the NPP, that the success of the votes, why they boycotted the election, was because, and they didn't want to accept the results, was that the INEC at that time was compromised, and that political neutrality issue was at stake. So it beats anybody's imagination that the president would today make such a declaration. People are also concerned about the fact that the professional background of this person, an IT person, and in this day and age, when we're talking about elections, IT plays a big role in this. So that is a concern why we shouldn't adopt a positivist approach to this matter, that this is what the law is saying. There's a moralist argument to it, which deals with the question of neutrality. And it's clearly on the face of the record that this person is tainted, and therefore he shouldn't be part of the process.
But
There's
Prof,
already been a number.
But Prof, like judges, if you are appointed a judge, and then you still want to look back and do any favor to anybody, then you are not worthy of that calling, are you? Especially when you have the protection of the law for your office. It's the same protection that people who are appointed to Electoral Commission have. So we know judges who have been appointed in the US, I mean, you must be appointed because you belong to a particular tradition. And yet, once they are appointed, they disappoint, you know, the government or those who brought them in because they follow the law. Why can't we look at it this way rather than say, once you are tainted politically, when you go there, you will remain the same? It's neutrality. Can people not be neutral and yet impartial?
It's possible. It's possible. But the question is, why don't you put things in the right place to avoid any eventuality? Because if you appoint this person who is neutral, who is politically not neutral, and is aligned to a political party, and then he goes and he doesn't disappoint the appointer, then we have a problem, because we would already have endorsed the person. And if you look at the structure of the EC, there have been questions about the duration in office of such people. When they are brought into office, they remain there for a very long time. And so in that situation, until the person goes on retirement or something, the person will remain there. And we're doing the hard
just like judges,
the one that appointed him. And that is very dangerous. And so we follow tradition. The tradition has been that we are following the neutrality style.
Okay.
And so why change now? Otherwise, we bring in other political parties as well and look at the issue from the number of political parties and the fact that each one should be represented in the INEC.
All right.
Going to IPAC, to me, will not solve the problem, because IPAC itself has had its problems in recent times as well. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Professor Bafo-Adjumandua, this neutrality thing, is it not a farce?
It is a farce, Samson. It is. And I'll tell you why it's a farce. The Constitution creates these bodies and says they should be independent. But at the same time, the same Constitution gives the appointing authority to a person who is partisan. You see, if you want a president or the appointive authority to be neutral, then that person must be head of state if you take certain policies into account, not the head of government. Because the head of government is a political partisan person. So when we are asking that the appointed individual should be independent in the commission, which is supposedly independent, now at the same time we have a president who is also head of government making that appointment, then you have a serious contradiction there. Having said that, Samson, I think the president's statement that you played for us was a little bit misplaced, you see. And I'm glad that my good friend, Professor Tuahim, has referred to the Tuahim report after the 1992 elections. The attempt to place the emphasis on the person casting the vote rather than the process and the managers of the process, I don't think it's a proper attempt. Because you see, again on the neutrality, you are using, and I'm glad you quoted the Bible. Unfortunately, I'm not biblically inclined. So let me use the layman's word, optics. The optics, when you're talking about neutrality. Even if the person that you are appointing can disappoint you, just like you refer to the American system, where a Supreme Court judge known to be conservative will come on the panel and then, behave otherwise. The optics always raises debate in the United States. Whenever a president is appointing someone known to be A or B, that in itself will raise the debate. And that's what we are experiencing here. So I think presidents or appointing authorities should be very mindful of the optics of the actions or decisions that they make. And this is a clear case. I don't know this, Dr. Akiaje, but if what you showed us on the screen not long ago, that he was even a candidate for a ministerial appointment, and I hope that is also true, kind of a thing you showed, then of course it will make people wonder why a president will deliberately choose someone who is known to be closely associated with a party, So I think the optics very bad, but at the same time, I will go to the creation of the electoral system that places the appointive authority in the president. In fact, just a day or so ago, the former president, Mahama, had made an interesting point about why not amend that section and compel the president to submit nominees to parliament for approval. Even then, would that work? Just as what we saw yesterday in parliament, will that even cure the problem? No. But you see, there are other models of constituting elections around the world. We can look at various models and make a determined decision. One thing interesting about democracy that all of us tend to miss is that democratic practice is not a straitjacket. The fact that is done in country A doesn't mean it should be done in country B. But we are always adopting systems that do not fit us. So I'm saying that there are various models we can look at. In Bangladesh, for instance, they don't have a standing commission. They have a secretariat, but whenever a year or so to elections, they bring some people together to supervise the whole thing. After that, that commission is dissolved. That's a model. So there are so many things we can look at. Or he cited, my friend cited the case of Burkina Faso, where you bring in various constituencies, their representatives, and they make the decision, they supervise, and you go. So we shouldn't tie ourselves to a system which is supposed to create a neutral body, and yet the one who appoints membership to that body is a partisan. We can assume that the president, once he becomes a president, becomes the father of the nation, becomes a statesman, blah, blah, blah. But it doesn't work for us. So, in short, Samson, I think this whole problem we are facing, and we have gone back into history, the case of Charlotte Osei and many others, and to add to what my friend started from the Afrobarometer, there was a time Ghana was hailed as perhaps the leading democracy in the world. Yeah. Recent Afrobarometer reports will indicate that we've slided. And even the support for democracy in Ghana today is not the same as we had in the 2004-2006 Afrobarometer reports. It's gone down from highest 86 to 90 during those years to currently, as I speak to you, hovering around 50%. So we have a challenge, and the challenge is enormous. And I think those who are calling for constitutional reviews should be supported. Unless we revise the power relations that the Constitution has created, we are going to suffer these kinds of aberrations all the time. Samson.
All right. Thank you very much. We'll take a break here, and when we return, I'll share a few of your views with you, and then we will decide we had tabled 3 issues to discuss, but that was subject to what was going to happen in Parliament. And the big issue came out of Parliament, which we had to deal with. So one of the 2 that is remaining, the investigations into Galamsey, alleged at the presidency and in the party, and the true state of the nation address as presented by the Johnson Esiedu Nketia. We'll have a discussion with our guests to determine which one we postpone. We'll be right back.